Welcome to another of our online reflection for learning activities. This one is called Microphenomenological Inquiry. And microphenomenology is a research tradition associated with, amongst other people, Claire Pettit and Jen's work. It's a tool for very fine-grained reflective practice, for looking very closely at how we do what we do. So let me just lead you through a little exercise. I'm going to ask you to sketch an animal in the air with your fingertip that describes something important about how universities work. And then the microphenomenological inquiry is what Shane would call a reflection on action. And we're going to look at a very fine resolution way of how you did that process. So just settle into the chair where you're sitting. Relax into being supported by the floor and the chair, and notice the texture of the chair and your body, and etc. Wherever you are, and take your time just to sort of settle down and be kind of quietly present. See if you can settle into a bit of easy curiosity. Now I have a small task for you to do. Think about something important about how universities work, and think about an animal that says something about that something important. So it could be a mammal, a bird, a reptile, a fish, an amphibian, an insect. I'd like you to trace in the air with your fingertip a sketch of the animal that comes for you as you think about something important about how universities work. And as you sketch, take in how your animal helps us understand universities. Thank you. Now let's do a little bit of fine-grained reflection. If you just take yourself back to the beginning of this process, when you were quietening down and I was inviting you to relax and feel the chair and maybe feel your way towards some curiosity. When you were there, how are you feeling? So going right back to just the initial instruction to relax and to be present quietly. So take yourself back to that place and just notice the sort of the feeling tone, the textures of being here. How did relaxing go? Was that easy to do, hard to do? Were you feeling a little complicated or quite quiet, peaceful? Whatever that was, just notice what was there for you. And then when you've taken that in, move forward to the moment where you hear the instruction to sketch an animal that describes something important about how universities work. So bringing yourself forward to that moment. Then ask yourself, how do you begin? How did you know how to begin? What was the process of the idea of the animal coming? How did you start all of this? Just have a really fine-grained look at what was going on then, what happened first, and how the movements carried forward from there. And when you'd found your animal and you started sketching, what did you do next? What was the process of sketching like? How was that working? Did you have a sense as you were sketching of how the animal helps you understand universities? Just noticing in a generous and curious way what it was that was going on as you were doing all of that. And as you move your way forward in that little exercise, how did you know you had finished? How did you know when to stop? You might like to go back and forth a bit, but going right back to the beginning and relaxing, noticing how the question, the instructions came in for you, how you found a way to start, what happened after that, and how you knew you'd finished. So just kind of savoring and exploring that process of beginning a little exercise and moving through it and then concluding. And when you feel ready, you can just move on to the last question, which is, what have you learned about how you were thinking and imagining as through this very fine-grained reflection? And now I'll just invite any comments that you've got, anything that came for you. Maybe we should go back to gallery view, Marina. Or not. So did anybody notice anything?
I noticed, Greg, how in response to your question, where did the idea of the animal come from, that I still don't know. It just popped into my head. And so through that process of trying to work out how did it pop into my head, I became quite, I don't know, concerned that I wasn't able to trace that, I think. And there must have been such a, microsecond of analysis there, but I still can't trace it back. Probably from listening and looking at words, I think it popped into my head. So that was where I kind of got stuck, going round and round with that as you were going through the other questions.
Well, probably it would have been good if I hadn't put it quite that way, because just noticing that it just pops in is actually probably the really precious insight there, I think. Where you
probably should have left it at that then.
Thinking is, well, or enjoyed it. Yeah. It's surprising the way it works.
I'll add that.
Yeah, go for it, Marina.
My animal also popped into my head, and I came up fairly quickly with a response as to why, so that was fine. But I really liked the scaffolding of the prompts that you were asking, because they really made me think more deeply about my processes of, I guess, thinking and reflection.
So how did you know that you'd finished? What came when you were asking yourself that question?
I was being very formal in that in drawing the animal, I thought I'd covered most of its body.
Yeah.
And then I finished, and then I thought, actually, if I were to do that again, I would have a full-on face profile rather than I was drawing a side body profile. Then I wanted to start again, but I thought I won't.
Yeah. So it had a sense of completeness just through the shape being complete.
Yeah.
And did you notice how that felt somatically at all?
I would like to say satisfying, but my drawing skills are really poor.
So in the direction of that.
It was like nobody else would recognize that animal if they looked at it. But it was fun. You know, I enjoyed having that application of choosing an animal. Still fun. And the fact that nobody could see it meant that it didn't matter that it was badly drawn.
So that's cool. And Agnes or Anne-Louise, do either of you have anything you want to add? Don't feel you need to.
Greg, I think I got a little bit caught on the connection between the animal and the functions of the university. And so I was inspired by your mention of curiosity at the beginning. And then I thought, of course, curiosity killed the cat. And so I had to sketch a cat. But then as I was thinking through how I got there, it came into that thinking about how universities work. And it was hard to kind of disconnect the different ideas. But the sensation of sketching a cat felt very much like I was patting a cat and sketching it with my fingers in that way.
And how did the cats sort of speak to the university, the way universities work?
Well, I was thinking about curiosity and cats, and I was thinking about cats and their relationships with humans as opposed to dogs. And I started thinking about that sense of identity and connection with the institution and the value in being more like a cat in our relationship with the university.
Cool, thank you. So for anybody listening, I probably shouldn't have asked a question that started with why. It would be much better to ask how and what questions, so that people don't get tripped up on trying to explain, because this is more about just noticing the fine-grained process. So take that as a rider on what I just did. And if we can move on, Marina, and I'll do that. Okay. So this particular practice isn't in the book yet, in this current edition of Reflection for Learning, a scholarly practice guide for educators, but we will add it in when we do a revised version. But this book's online at Advanced HE from the UK, and has a lot of very interesting practices that would be helpful for you if you want to both practice reflection yourself or teach reflection online or in the classroom. So we've offered that to you, and I hope you'd enjoy it if you find it. And if you do try this practice or some of the other practices, then please let us know how you went. You can just send us an email at reflection4lc@gmail.com. Thank you very much for watching this little practice experiment.